Diaries talk show where women inspire women, one story at a time. I hope you've taken some time to watch some of my previous videos where I've brought you some other women that have dealt with some issues, and I hope you've taken something from them, because the reason why High Heal Diaries is here is to inspire each other. So hopefully you'll watch them and take something from them. And when you do, please like them, subscribe, and share the videos so that we can all continue to help each other. Please follow me also on any of my other social media sites. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and have a look at my website. There's a wealth of information there as well, highhealdiaries.com. And don't forget, it's H-E-A-L for heal. So today, I'm very honored to have a lovely woman here with me. Her name is Pauline, and Pauline's dealt with some issues that a lot of women deal with, but it goes undiagnosed for the most part. And she's been through her journey, and she's at a better place right now, and she wants to share her story with us. Her story about an unwanted visitor. So here's Pauline, and thank you so much for being here, Pauline.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so the unwanted visitor is a visitor that a lot of us do know about. My mother has had it as well, and we're talking about fibroids. My sister-in-law. So it's something that's very common in women. So you've dealt with it, and you're here now, and you've gone through it for a while, and you now want to talk about it.
That's right.
Yeah. So thanks. So tell us what exactly is fibroids?
Well, fibroids is more or less a muscle that grows on the outer wall of the uterus, and it can range in various sizes from 1 centimeter to 3 centimeters, even 5 centimeters. A perfect example would be the size of a grapefruit as a larger fibroid.
Well, they can get that big.
Yep, they can get that big. And it's very painful. It causes a lot of discomfort for women. And some of the symptoms are more or less heavy menstrual cycles, a lot of cramps, heavy bleeding, irregular cycles as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a very uncomfortable and unwanted visitor.
Yeah, I'm going to get to more of the symptoms because I want to talk more about that, because a lot of women, I think they probably do have these symptoms, but because we as women go through the monthly cycle, and a lot of times women, especially of a certain age, they change, but they don't realize that there might be something more going on. So I'll talk to you more about that. So when do you think you first realized that something was different or something was wrong?
Well, I have 3 sons, and essentially it was in 1990 when I had my second son that the hospital requested that I return back. They noticed some cancer cells on my uterus and they wanted to freeze them. So that was sort of unknown to me back then. Yes, I was younger and didn't know much about it. So I went through the process of doing that. It was just a laser types, 1 day inpatient surgery.
And sorry, I don't want to cut you, but how old were you approximately?
Give away my age. I was actually 21 at the time.
Okay,
21.
so that's important to know because very young.
Yes. Yeah. So I returned back and I had the surgery, and I didn't have any problems for years until roughly about 2008. I was experiencing a lot of pain, a lot of cramps, headaches, etc., symptoms associated with it. And I saw my doctor, my family doctor, and he more or less diagnosed it as just normal menstrual cycle. And it continued to happen until 2010, when I really couldn't handle it anymore. And I went and demanded, more or less, that further tests be done. And that's when they determined that, yes, I do have fibroids.
Yeah. And see, you really have to be an advocate for yourself. I find that with a lot of things you have to be, with women and different health issues, because I'm talking more from my own experience with breast cancer. I was told I was too young, so it can't be that, or there's no family history. But you have to definitely push, and you have to know your body.
That's right. That's right.
So your doctor now so now you have fibroids.
Right. So they conducted the test and told me I have the fibroids, and I asked, well, what do we do now? Exactly what you said. I'm very young, so the fact that even though I had 3 children, they suggested that I not do anything. It will go away over time with menopause. So that was in 2010, and typically, if I'm not mistaken, menopause usually comes when you're around 50, 55,
Right, so you still have some time to go.
That's right. So 15 years of having to go through that, I thought, this is not normal. So I was very persistent that I wanted something done, but he insisted that I don't need to, and suggested maybe wearing an IUD. So I thought, well, At the time, I actually had tied my tubes, and I knew I wasn't having any more children. That's usually what the concern is, that you may change your mind and want to have more children, and doing any sort of other surgical procedures would result in us not being able to be pregnant. So I kind of carried it for a while and thought, you know, I'll live through it. And living through it was not the best decision I made.
So how long do you think you were going through all your symptoms and your pain?
Yeah. Sorry, not to cut you
How
off.
long? Yeah, go ahead.
It was about, I think, 5 years after that. It got to the point where I couldn't handle it anymore. Emotionally, physically, it really takes a toll on you.
Right.
And I decided I needed to do something more. So I started to do a little bit more research on it, and I really looked into what fibroids are and what the symptoms, again, are, and the cause and the long-term effects. So although I was a little bit closer to the menopausal stage of my life, I didn't want to wait that long either, because I really do want to have normal activity in my life.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think it got really bad in 2014, 15, when I really started to exercise a lot more, because I felt it was necessary. I started noticing weight gain and some other things that made me push myself to say, I really have to control this now. It was so painful, I had to stop exercising, because mine was a little bit different than maybe the normal course of a female carrying fibroids. Mine were actually really large.
And you had three of them.
Yes, they're benign. They're not necessarily cancerous. And if they determine that they're cancerous, then they'd obviously do something more.
Right.
But the fact that they continue to grow is what really, I think, made me angry. I got to the point and stage of being not just upset anymore, but I was really angry.
Yeah, because had they done something about it before, then they would be growing, and wouldn't be so much pain and affecting your quality of life.
That's right.
So you were talking about some things that you're doing to try to alleviate, some of the pain, and I know that there's some naturopathic treatments that a lot of doctors can recommend. So I found some of them, and I wanted to just throw them out there, because some women believe that, okay, going to the doctor and cutting them out of meat is the only course of action, but there are some other things. So they talked about enzyme treatment. So I don't know if you did any of these things, but to curb the inflammation. So enzyme treatment, curcumin, hops and rosemary combinations. And coming from the islands, I'm sure there's a lot of things that our moms would say, try this and try this plant and boil this tea and all that, right? Proper diet and exercise, as you were implementing into your routine, and detection and elimination of food allergies, because it's estrogen grown, right? Estrogen fed, right? Adrenal gland supports. Other treatments maybe decrease in excess estrogen activity, again, to reduce the amount of estrogen taken in, built in your body. Liver detox and healthy weight loss acupuncture and Chinese herbs. So I don't know if any of those things you tried, but I'm hearing that sometimes, for some, when it's not very serious, the way to go. But for you, it got to a point where it was like you couldn't deal with it anymore.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think the anger came from me continuously going to my doctor, whether I had accidents or, like I said, the pain that I couldn't handle anymore. And what really bothered me was that although my doctor suggested that menopause would be the best stage and the IUD would help to somewhat decrease the size of the fibroids, he was very adamant not to do anything more and never referred me to a specialist or anyone else. And he even actually said to me, you seem very angry. And I said, I'm really frustrated. I've reached my point of just utter frustration and I want something done. He wouldn't do anything. He wouldn't refer me. And I think that's when I said, okay, I have to make a choice and either, move on to another doctor, which you may know is very difficult to do that when you have a family doctor. So I did that. I ended up going to another female doctor who was well on her way to getting me looked after. Great doctor, made some great recommendations, and was starting to do the tests, obviously, to just sort of familiarize herself with, my status and my physical ability. And unfortunately, she packed up her practice and moved out of country.
Oh, wow.
So here I was. I felt
sounds like my story with my doctor. She's in Vancouver right now.
Wow. We'll have to share names.
Yeah, right.
So that part, I think, just sort of threw me a curve. And I'll be honest, I felt like I went into a depression. It was like there was no way out with this. Why do I keep hitting these walls and roadblocks?
Wow.
So,
So I'm going to let you tell me some more, but while we're on certain subjects, we're talking about the emotional side of it. Now, it being your fibroids being an estrogen-fed problem for women have that. Sometimes an overproduction of it can cause certain issues, concerns, cancers, like my breast cancer, the type I had was estrogen-fed. So that in turn with other issues you might have, female hormones, everyday life, the problem that you're having internally, change in your body image, all those things are playing a part. So yes, you're going to be angry. And you want someone to do something about it, and you can't do anything about it yourself.
That's
so It's like, why can't this doctor help me? So tell me more about some of the feelings you're feeling, like your relations with, say intimacy, your children, like any of that. It was all affected.
I think, and I mean, for the most part, thank God, they're boys and they don't really understand what women go through, except just stay out of mom's way and do as she says. But I think the emotional toll was even when it came to having a relationship. I really just didn't want to be around someone. I just felt uncomfortable. I felt, like I wasn't whole and I wasn't pure. And, again, resisting the pain from the cramping and just the discomfort. I really just wanted to sleep in t-shirts every night, and be comfortable. So it takes away from your whole demeanor. But, thank goodness, I'm just one of those people that no matter what, the saying is you get up and you get. And I just felt like I had to keep going, no matter what my emotional state was. But I think sometimes I did wear it on my sleeves. That's the hard part, right? You can't hide it.
Yeah, can't. And eventually it comes out in other ways, right?
It does.
We as women, we tend to just keep everything kind of under wraps for many reasons, because we have to just get up and go. We got so much to do, and you can't always be this emotional mess, because if we ever to, like you said, wear all of our emotions on our sleeves all the time, then we'd never get anything done.
That's right.
And all of our relations would be affected. But for the most part, we deal with it internally, and then, we go about and do everything else that we need to do in life, but it builds up, and eventually you have to get it out, right? Yeah. Right. So your relation. So how was work with you? Because I'm sure you probably had to have time off, here and there.
Well, yes, sometimes. Yeah. But I'm just one of those people that unless it's really detrimental, I get up and go to work. Yeah. But I think a part of the emotional attachment to that was that I had friends who also had fibroids, and their doctors were well underway of giving them the proper treatment and referring them to the right doctors, and maybe even taking a different course. And here I was still sort of stuck. Until I decided, I actually talked about it to a friend of mine who owns a gym, great friend of mine, Martin, and he mentioned that one of his associates there referred a friend, to her family doctor, and the doctor was right on top of it. And I said, oh, wow. So I met with her, and I talked to her, and she said her friend just went through it, and everything went really, really well. It was a great surgeon, great family doctor, and I thought, okay, well, I'm not in the area, so he may not consider taking me on as a patient. But it turns out that it was in the area. I had just moved, and as a result of that, he could see me as a new patient. So that was great. And then what he suggested was that I have my files transferred from the previous doctor to him, and then he'll look into it more. But right away, sent me for some tests, sent me for blood work, tried to determine again what my status was. And I think the shocker out of everything was he more or less said to me, you're equivalent to an 18-week pregnancy, and you're not pregnant.
Wow. So your abdomen was distended that much.
That's right. Yeah. And it does create, the emotional distress, which leads to emotional eating. It slows down your pace. We're getting older, right? Our bones are deteriorating as well, and try to keep that up.
Which, in those things, the stress and the emotional eating, the excess weight is a problem in itself when you have fibroids.
Yeah, it adds to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when was it that now finally you got the aha moment when you knew that you're gonna get your surgery done?
Well, this was in 2016, and I was really excited about it. But knock on wood, all things go well. I started a new job February of 2016, and at that time it wasn't a good time. So I just joined the division. I was still kind of on a learning curve, and then they offered me another sort of project to take on for the city. And with that meant that I needed to be very focused and engaged, and I had to put off the surgery. And it wasn't until I expected the rollout to happen in September and I realized we're not rolling out in September, and I thought, okay, now it's about me.
Yep.
So I decided to go back to the doctor and say, okay, what do I need to do now to start the process? Because there's a process.
Yeah. Is there?
And when will this scheduled surgery be? The process is that they actually they force you into menopause, more or less.
So with medication?
With medication, yeah. So it was very strong medication. It made me nauseous for weeks. It gave me headaches. And prior to that, because of the fibroids, I had really bad, low iron. So I had to take iron pills.
Because you lose a lot of blood.
That's right.
Obviously, right?
And iron pills in itself, that's another thing. And if you have a weak stomach, it upsets your stomach, causes headaches. So I had to stop taking the iron pills and go on to this other medication, and just think of the medication more or less shrinking a uterus.
Okay.
So that's another form of pain that you're feeling.
Yes.
And that was really emotionally draining on me, I
Yeah.
have to say. I thought I just wanted to give up. Like, I can't do this.
Yeah. Did you nurse your children?
I did.
I'm asking
yes.
only because I'm talking about the shrinking of the uterus.
Yes.
Do you recall when you're nursing and how
Yes.
so that is excruciating
It
pain. So I
is.
can imagine that you had to go through that for a period of time.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that I was
Yeah.
actually going through this, and I thought at my age, when I found out about it, I was 40 at the time. Now I'm 47, 48, and I would have been probably in a much better position to start the process 10 years ago or 8 years ago.
Physically, yes.
Here I am,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think all of that, the build-up, it made me more angry.
I was just going to say
honest.
that then those feelings come back again, right?
Yeah.
But then again, you come to this place whereby anger is not going to help do anything anymore.
No.
So we're going to try to eliminate that and look forward and see, look to see what's going to
Right.
happen next in order to get to the happy place,
That's
which
right.
is having this surgery and moving on. So January 9th is when you
January
had the
9th.
surgery, 2016.
That's 2017.
2017.
This year.
Right.
Yes.
Right, because you started your job in 16.
That's right.
Right.
So I was actually really excited. My options were December 15th with a 2-month recovery, or January 9th. So I thought, well, I don't want to spend the holidays laid up in bed. And I have, my grandson and family that I'd love to spend Christmas with. So I decided January 9th would be appropriate, and had the surgery, and everything went well. I thought it went great. And the next day, they try to get you up and walking and obviously get you circulating again, back to normal routine, even though it's a major surgery, because mine was so big they actually had to cut me, but there is another process that they could use as well if it's a smaller uterus. So
So
I
yours
have an
was
incision.
incision.
Yes. Yeah, it's almost the same as having a C-section,
Okay.
basically.
So it's a
right?
low cut down
It
of the,
is,
yeah.
Great doctor. He was amazing, very pleasant, very informative. I went to the Etobicoke General Hospital, and they were great. I have to give them credit.
Good.
The nurses, the doctors, everyone, they were wonderful.
That's great.
And then the next day, apparently the hospital was in gridlock. There was a lot of accidents, slip and falls, because it was really bad
Winter,
weather.
yeah.
So they needed to move me from the surgical floor to the neonatal floor, which
Right.
is more or less a C-section. That's where they would put you. So I said, okay, not a problem. And they said, well, since we have to get you up on your feet at some point, why don't we try to get you up now? And I thought, okay, I'm not ready for this. But
This was the next day after
This was the very
surgery?
next day at around 10 in the morning. And had to wait a while. Eventually someone came, and there was 4 nurses, and then they ended up moving me onto a stretcher instead of getting me up. And that was painful, but fine. Said, we'll do this. Moved up to the next floor. And just as we got there, they said, we're going to try to get you off the stretcher and get you to just walk over to the bed. So as I did that, and they said, try to, just step down. There was no floor there for me. I'm all but 5 foot nothing.
No.
So I couldn't reach the floor, and I felt myself slipping.
Oh.
And then I felt something rip, and I felt something pop. And all I said was, put me back, because the shock that went into me, I laid there and I said, don't move me, don't touch me. And I said, I felt like something ripped. And they said, oh, no, it's normal. That's the normal feeling you feel after a surgery. And I said, I know my body very well.
Yeah.
Something ripped. I said, please just look. They looked and they said, okay, well, it's obviously a very fresh cut. So it did rip a little.
So your incision.
The incision, yes. So I felt the pain, and that was brutal.
Yeah.
So I felt like I needed to be on painkillers nonstop. But what I didn't know was that there was a bigger concern. The doctor came that day to visit me, and he said, "How are you doing?" And I told him, and I said, "Something happened. I don't know what it is." And he said, "It's just the movement because it's still very fresh and very fragile." So the next day they released me. They let me go home. And I thought, okay, day 3. On day 5, it was a Saturday morning. I was in so much pain. I was sort of more or less keeled over crying. I couldn't handle the pain. And I didn't know what it was. And I called the hospital and they said, "Well, that's not normal. Are you taking painkillers?" Which they gave me. And I said, "I'm taking everything that the hospital gave me." And I went back to the hospital and they did an x-ray. I don't know why, an x-ray, but they couldn't figure out what was wrong, what was causing the pain. They gave me some morphine to calm down my nerves and whatever the muscle pains were, because it's usually muscle. Because they do cut through muscle and skin tissue.
Just like a cesarean.
That's right.
I've had 3.
Wow.
But yes.
Yeah, you had your hands full. What am I complaining about, right?
Well, it's all relative. It's what you know, right?
Yeah.
So you had
they sent me home. They
Yeah.
said, "We can't really tell what's wrong, but you can follow up with your family doctor." So went home. A lot of gas, a lot of bloating, a lot of trying to walk up and down. I felt like I was pregnant and pacing. And then I think a week and a half later, same thing, went back to the hospital. The pain would not go away.
Yeah. So what was it?
Couldn't figure it out. And it wasn't until the 3rd week when I called the surgeon and I said, "I really can't bear this pain anymore. It's so painful and intrusive. I just want to go back to, I almost want the uterus back." That's how bad it was. So he said, "Come in and see me." He booked me in for the next day. And he says, "I don't normally do an exam this soon after the surgery. It's usually a month or 2 months in."
Right.
But he did examine me and he determined that I burst some blood vessels, which may have happened when I was moved.
Right.
So it's something like a hernia, but it's called a rheumatoid.
Okay.
So you burst blood vessels that are inside, and there's nothing you can do except wait it out.
Oh, wow.
So painkillers and hot water bottles or
Yeah.
heating pads.
And eventually it went away.
3 weeks later.
Wow.
So I had to just sit still for 3 weeks and just not do anything. So that kind of added to my stress and my discomfort, and I'm still, I think, to some degree healing.
Well, that's only January.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a 6-month process, but
And
we're
scar
in month 4.
tissue, I had a surgery in January myself, and the scar tissue can be so tight that pain lasts for a long time, like
Really?
for years even.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So I'm not discouraging you
Yeah.
that that's what's going to happen
Good.
to you, right?
I'm not alone.
No. But to know that you're gonna feel pain down there, and then with me, it's 3 cesareans over, cut in the same spot. So with each pregnancy, the healing process was longer.
Of course.
Yeah, for
Yes.
sure. And I'm a busybody. I don't know how to stay put.
You're a
I don't know
trooper.
how you did it. I don't know how you
I'm not
stayed
a, I'm
for
not a
so
stay
long.
putter.
So okay, so how do you feel now?
Well, now I'm happy that it's done and over with, and I'm just one of those people. I'm very antsy and very anxious to kind of get back to. I don't want to say my normal routine because I feel a little bit more enlightened now,
Right.
and I want to do things differently. I want to do all the things that I put off for so long. And
Yes.
I haven't been on vacation in a long time, and I need one.
Yeah.
But I want to get through the healing
Oh,
process
good. Because
first.
now,
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what your body was like, but do you feel that your body's now different in size, your abdomen? Do you feel better about yourself that way?
I do,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, and I understand that everything that I'm experiencing right now is part of this process, but like the weight gain and not being able to move as much, those are normal things
Right.
that I
So
can
you
manage.
had a full hysterectomy done as well, right?
They left the eggs. The ovaries were, unless they're diseased ovaries, they don't remove
Okay.
them, which is great because then I don't have to take hormonal pills until menopause. But so they did remove the uterus, and I guess it's kind of a fresh start. Right.
Right. For so long, that visitor has been with you. Now you're like happy to see them go.
Yes, I am.
Right. Well, that's
I really
great.
am.
So we talked about body image, intimacy, and family, and all that. But do you think that there's a misconception in society about women that have fibroids? Because we don't talk about these personal issues a lot, especially something so personal. And then when someone sees you or knows that you've been in hospital or been bedridden for a little while because of it, do you think that there's no understanding and no real tolerance to someone who's dealing with it because they don't seem to be physically ailing? It's more something that's, yes, it's internal, but you might show, physical pain. But do you think that there's this, because I know my mom had that for so long, she had a hard time with work. They when she was home bleeding for periods at a time, and then she'd come into work the next week and she's fine, then the next week again she's off and in pain. I think they really had a hard time understanding what's really going on with her, right? So do you think that? I mean,
I guess I never let it allow me get to that stage.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried to work around it, which is probably not the best thing to do,
Yeah.
because you put yourself in a predicament. Your health is important. And again, your emotions, your limits are, you're pushing your limits to the end there. But my previous management and work team, they were great. They had kind of understood to some degree. My new manager, the same thing. She didn't really question me. I told her, call me if you need anything. I'm at home. We talked quite a bit. We still engaged in conversation. So I think it's healthy to sort of maintain some normalcy, but at the same time, you do need to heal.
right.
And we can't push ourselves. Like, I just thought, I'll be back to work in 4 weeks.
Right.
They recommended 6 to 8. I needed that 6 to 8 weeks,
good.
I'll be honest.
So you've overcome, you've gone through your pain and your emotional struggle as well, and you've come out now on the better side of it. And that's what we aim for here. That's what I'm trying to do with High Heal Diaries. And I want to thank you for sharing your story. And I know that healing is a process. It's a long process because there's so many stages to it. It's not only physical healing, but there's the emotional, definitely the emotional side of it. And there's so many different stages, and you don't go through them in any kind of order. And you probably will still continue to, as I am still continuing to heal. But I want to thank you again for sharing your story, because that's part of the healing process. And when other women see it, they can also heal and say, you know what, gosh, I see she's talking about it now. I want that strength so that I can be able to do that as well.
But you're right.
So,
that's the important piece. Be strong about it.
Yeah.
And only you know your body best.
Yeah.
So you have to,
No.
you have to take those steps.
Definitely. I just wanted to give a little bit of information about some support groups that women can turn to, because sometimes when they're around other people that are dealing with the same thing, they feel better and they feel more supportive. So Canadian Women's Health Network, that's their website is www.cwhn.ca. Facebook even has a support group, Facebook support group. If you can just Google that, you'll find it. And Fibroid Relief Support Group, www.fibroidrelief.org. So if anybody needs to get more information or support, then go to those sites. Once again, thank you for watching. We're High Heal Diaries, where women are inspiring women one story at a time. Please like and share. If you found out some information from this video that was helpful to you, please give me a comment, send me a comment. If you are in a situation or have dealt with a situation in life whereby you would like to talk about it and share, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. All right, thank you very much, and see you next time.